it's working. Oh wow. I should. I'm so sorry. Oh, oh my. Oh, that's a mess. Oh, please try to ignore that. Oh, I'm really sorry about that too. Oh, I'm not doing good today. I already tried to film this video once, and it didn't go well for me. It ended up with a notification from my iPad that said that this video was too long to upload, and about half an hour, and a lot of frustration and tears and swearing later. I'm at my computer trying to refilm this video, and I also have a friend on Snapchat who I know watches my videos, so yo, I can't do that. I can't use gangsta speak when I'm about to read Edgar Allen Poe. It'll mess me up. Oh, I'm so charming and arrogant. Why am I even talking? Anyway, I have a book here that I want to read to you called Tales of Edgar Allan Poe. I was about 5 minutes into my last video before I realized that these are the tales of Edgar Allan Poe, not the poems of Edgar Allan Poe. So, I couldn't read The Raven like I was planning to. Once upon a midnight jury, while I pondered weak and weary over many quaint and curious font, more forgotten more, while I pondered weak and weary suddenly there came. While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping as if someone gently rapping at my chamber door. I was trying to look cool and I failed. Today's not my day. So, I am finding for you two of my favorite Edgar Allan Poe stories. I'm bookmarking this one for later. Actually, no, I should bookmark the other one. I'm already used to doing it in this order, so... Okay, so... The first story that I am reading to you... Sorry, I'm trying to find this other story here. I've got the bookmarker thing. Oh, missed it, I think. No. No, no. There it is. Thank you. Thank you. First story. Great, now can I find the first story? Oh wow, I opened right to it. Things have started to go my way for once. Adjust the headphones. And so, yeah, here I go. I'm going to be reading Edgar Allan Poe's story, The Telltale Heart. So, without further ado... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. This is very unprofessional, I know. I'm just typing this out. So, anyway, my birthday was a couple days ago. And that was pretty cool. Nothing really big to add to my rig, but I did start playing the keyboard, so I have a keyboard now. And so that's just pretty cool in general. So anyway, here I go. Without further ado, and I mean it this time, 5 minutes, damn it, I'm too far in. Without further ado, and I mean it this time, The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allen Poe. True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been, and am. But why will you say that I am bad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and the earth. I heard many things in the hell. How then am I mad? Hearken, and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye, with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so, by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now, this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than before the week I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently, and then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I first put in a dark lantern, all closed it so no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening so far that I could see the old man as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, while my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously, oh so cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights. Every night, just at midnight. But I found the eye was always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into his chamber, and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, inquiring how he had passed the night. So you see, he would have been very profound, the old man, indeed, to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves so quicker than mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, unless such as it. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph, to think that there I was, opening the door, little by little, and the old man, not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps the old man heard me, for he moved in the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch, with a thick darkness, for the shutters were close-fastened, through the fear of robbers, and so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and so I kept on pushing it steadily. about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the thick tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For another hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear the old man lie down. He was still sitting up in the bed, listening, just as I had done, night after night, hearkening to death watches in the wall. Presently I heard a slight groan. I knew that it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not the groan of pain or of grief. Oh no, it was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo. The terrors that distracted me, I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and I pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise, when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor, or it is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp." Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain, because death, in approaching the old man, had stalked with his black shadow before him, and the shadow had now reached and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard me, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing the old man lie down, I resolved to open a little, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily I opened it, until, at length, a single dim ray, like the thread of a spider, shot out from the crevice and fell full upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue, with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray, as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. And now, have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is over acuteness of the senses? Now, I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, much such as the sound of a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage. But even yet I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous, so I am. And now, at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable wrath. Yet for some minutes longer I refrained, kept still. But the breathing grew louder, louder. I thought the heart must burst, and now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once, only once. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then sat upon the bed and smiled gaily to find the deed had been done. But for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the walls. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. The old man was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. If still you think me mad, you will think so no longer. When I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body, the night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I took then up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber, and deposited it all between the scantlings. I replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men, who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, for what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man, I mentioned, was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them, at length, to his chamber. I showed them his treasures. Secure, undisturbed in the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease.
What?
They sat, and while I answered cheerily, They chatted of familiar things, but ere long I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied ringing in my ears, but still they sat and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definitiveness, until at length I found the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I grew now very pale, but I talked more fluently, and with a heightened voice, yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such as the sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key and with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced myself to and from on the floor with heavy strides, as if excited by fury to the observations of the men, but the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had sat, and grated it upon the boards, but the noise had rose over all, and continually increased. It grew louder, 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 and still the men chatted pleasantly, and smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God! No, no, they heard, they suspected, they knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think. But anything better than this agony, anything was more tolerable than this desertion. I could bear these hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now again, hark, louder, 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 louder. Villains, I shrieked, dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here, here, it is the beating of the hideous heart. So, that story was The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allen Poe. And that is the first story of the two that I will be reading tonight. The second story is a story that I actually first read in my 9th grade English class. It was the first trimester of it, though. So it was we have a weird system where you could end up with different teachers. I'm sure that it's pretty uniform around the nation, more or less. But the second trimester of English, we didn't do much Edgar Allan Poe reading. That was with a Mr. Lemback. But the first trimester was with a Mr. Way, and he was a pretty cool guy. And in his class, we read this short story by Edgar Allan Poe, and this is what really sparked my interest in him as an author. This story is The Cask of Amontillado. Lots of Italian words in this. Can't pronounce half of them. Perfecto. The 1,000 injuries of Fortunato I had borne the best I could, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. You, who know so well the nature of my soul, will not suppose, however, that I gave utterance to a threat. At length I would be avenged. This was a point definitively settled, but the very definitiveness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. A wrong is unredressed when the retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong. It must be understood that neither by word nor deed had I given Fortunato cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile now was one at the thought of his immolation. He had a weak point, this Fortunato, although in other regards he was a man to be respected and even feared. He prided himself upon his connoisseurship in wine. Few Italians had the true virtuoso spirit. For the most part, their enthusiasm is adopted to suit the time and opportunity to practice imposture upon the British and Austrian millionaires. In painting and gemmary, Fortunato, like his countrymen, was a quack, but in the matter of old wines, he was sincere. In this respect, I did not differ from him materially. I was skillful in the Italian vintages myself, and bought largely whenever I could. It was about dusk, one evening, that I encountered my friend. He accosted me with excessive warmth, for he had been drinking much. The man wore motley. He had on a tight-fitting party-striped dress, and his head was surmounted by a conical cap and bells. I was so pleased to see him that I thought I should never have done wringing his hand. I said to him, "My dear Fortunato, you are luckily met. How remarkably well you are looking today. But I have received a pipe of what passes for Amontillado, and I have my doubts." "How?" said he. "Amontillado? A pipe? Impossible! And in the middle of the carnival!" "I have my doubts," I replied, "and I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you in the matter. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain." "How?" said he. "Amontillado!" "I have my doubts. Amontillado! And I must satisfy them. Amontillado! As you are engaged, I am on my way to Lucchesi. If anyone has a critical turn, it is he. He will tell me Lucchesi cannot tell Amontillado from sherry, and yet some fools will have it that his taste is a match for your own. Come, let us go." "Whither?" "To your vaults." "My friend, no. I will not impose upon your good nature. I perceive you have an engagement. Lucchesi, I have no engagement. Come." "My friend, no. It is not the engagement, but the severe cold with which I perceive you are afflicted. The vaults are insufferably damp. They are encrusted with nitre. Let us go, nevertheless. The cold is merely nothing. Amontillado! You have been imposed upon. And as for Lucchesi, he cannot distinguish sherry from Amontillado." Thus speaking, Fortunato possessed himself of my arm, and putting on a mask of black silk, and drawing the roquelaire closely about my person, I suffered him to hurry me to my plaza. There were no attendants at home. They had absconded to make merry in honor of the time. I had told them that I should not return until morning, and had given them explicit orders not to stir from the house. These orders were sufficient, I well knew, to ensure their immediate disappearance, one and all, as soon as my back was turned. I took from their scones 2 flambeaux, giving one to Fortunato, bowed him through several suites of rooms to the archway that led into the vaults. I passed down a long and winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. We came upon length to the foot of the descent, and stood together upon the damp ground of the catacombs of the Montresors. The gait of my friend was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled as he strode. "The pipe," said he. "It is further on," said I, "but observe the white webwork with which gleams from these cavern walls." He turned towards me, and looked into my eyes with 2 filmy orbs that distilled the rheum of intoxication. "Nitre?" he asked at length. "Nitre," I replied. "How long have you had that cough?" My poor friend found it impossible to reply for many minutes. It is nothing," he said at last. "Come," I said with decision, "we will go back. Your health is precious. You are rich, respected, admired, beloved. You are happy, as once I was. You are a man to be missed. For me it is no matter. We will go back. You will be ill, and I cannot be responsible. Besides, there is Lucchesi." "Enough," he said. "The cough is a mere nothing. It will not kill me. I shall not die of a cough." True, I replied. And indeed, I had no intention of alarming you unnecessarily, but you should use all proper caution. A draught of this Medoc will defend us from the damps." Here I knocked off the neck of a bottle, which I drew from a long row of its fellows that lay upon the mold. "Drink," I said, presenting him with the wine. He raised it to his lips with a leer. He paused. And I paused. He paused and nodded me familiar. I am so sorry. He paused and nodded to me familiarly, while his bells jingled. "I drink," he said, "to the buried that repose around us, and I to your long life." He again took my arm, and we proceeded. "These vaults," he said, "are extensive." "Montresorts," I replied, "were a great and numerous family." "I forget your arms. A huge human foot d'or in a field of azure. The foot crushes a serpent, rampant, with whose fangs are embedded in the heel." "And the motto?" "Nemo mile, impune licessit." No one challenges me with impunity. "Good," he said. The wine sparkled in his eyes, and the bells jingled. We passed through long walls of piled skeletons, with casks and puncheons intermingling. In the innermost recesses of the catacombs, I paused again, and this time I made bold to seize Fortunato by an arm above the elbow. "The nitre," I said. "See, it increases. It hangs like a moss upon the vaults. We are below the river's bed. The drops of moisture trickle among the bones. Come, we will go back, ere it is too late. Your cough—" "It is nothing," he said. "Let us go on. But first another draught of the meadow." I broke and reached him another falcon of Del Grave. He emptied it at a breath. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. He laughed and threw the bottle upwards with a gesticulation I did not understand. I looked at him in surprise. He repeated the gesture, a grotesque one. "You do not comprehend?" he said. "Not I," I replied. "Then you are not of the Brotherhood." "How? You are not of the Masons?" Yes, I said. Yes. "You? Impossible. A Mason." "A Mason," I replied. "A sign," he said. "A sign." "It is this," I answered, producing from beneath the folds of my roquelaire a trowel. "You jest," he exclaimed, recoiling a few paces. "But let us proceed to the Amontillado." "Be it so," I said, replacing the tool beneath my cloak, and again offering him my arm. He leaned upon it heavily. We continued our route in search of the Amontillado. We passed through a range of low arches, descended, passed on, and descending again, arrived at a deep crypt, in which the foulness of the air caused our flambeaux rather to glow than flame. At the most remote end of the crypt there appeared another less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human remains, piled to the vault overhead, in the fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. 3 sides of this interior crypt were still ornamented in this manner. From the 4th side, the bones had been thrown down and laid promiscuously upon the earth, forming, at one point, a mound of some size. Within the wall, thus exposed by the displacing of the bones, we perceived a still interior crypt or recess, in depth of about 4 feet, in width 3, in height 6 or 7. It seemed to have been constructed for no especial use within itself, but formed merely the interval between 2 of the colossal supports of the roof of the catacombs, and it was backed by one of their circumscribing walls of solid granite. It was in vain that Fortunato, uplifting his dull torch, endeavored to pry into the depth of the recess. Its termination, the feeble light, did not enable us to see. "Proceed," I said. "Here is the Amontillado. As for Luchesi, He is an ignoramus, interrupted my friend, as he stepped unsteadily forward. I followed immediately at his heels. In an instant he had reached the extremity of the niche. Finding his progress arrested by the rock, he stood stupidly bewildered. A moment more, and I had fettered to the granite. In its surface were two iron staples, distant from each other about 2 feet. Horizontally, from one of these depended a short chain, from the other a padlock. Throwing the links about his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was much too astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recess. "Pass your hand," I said, "over the wall. You cannot help feeling the nitre. It is indeed very damp. Once more, let me implore you to return. No? Then I must positively leave you. But I must first render you all the little attentions in my power." "The Amontillado!" ejaculated my friend, not yet recovered from his astonishment. "True," I replied, "the Amontillado." As I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones of which I had before spoken. Throwing them aside, I soon uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar. With these materials and the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. I had scarcely laid the first tier of the masonry when I discovered the earliest indication. I skipped one. I had scarcely laid the first tier of masonry when I discovered the intoxication of Fortunato had in a great measure worn off. The earliest indication I had of this was a low moaning cry from the depth of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. There was then a long and obstinate silence. I laid the second tier, and the third, and the fourth, and then I heard the furious vibration of the chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which that I might hearken to it with the more satisfaction. I ceased my labors, and sat down upon the bones. When at last the clanking subsided, I resumed the trowel, and finished without interruption the fifth, the sixth, and the seventh tier. The wall was now nearly upon a level with my breast. Again I paused, holding the flambeau over the mason work. Threw a few feeble rays upon the figure within. A succession of loud and shrill screams, bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form, seemed to thrust me violently back. For a brief moment I hesitated. I trembled. Unsheathing my rapier, I began to grope with it about the recess, but the thought of an instant reassured me. I placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacombs, and felt satisfied. I reapproached the wall. I replied to the yells of him who clamored. I re-echoed. I aided. I surpassed them in volume and in strength. I did this, and the clamor grew still. It was now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. I had finished a portion of the last and the 11th tier. There remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position, but now there came from out the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as that of the noble Fortunato. The voice said, a very good joke indeed, an excellent jest. We'll have many a rich laugh about it at the plaza, over our wine." "The Amontillado," I said. "Yes, the Amontillado, but is it not getting late? Will not they be awaiting us at the plaza, the Lady Fortunato and the rest? Let us be gone." "Yes," I said, "let us be gone." "For the love of God, Montresor." "Yes," I said, "for the love of God." But to these words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient. I called aloud, "Fortunato, No answer. I called again. Fortunato. No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. There came forth in return only a jingling of the bells. My heart grew sick. It was the dampness of the catacombs that made it so. I hastened to make an end of my labor. I forced the last stone into its position. I plastered it up. Against the new masonry, I re-erected the old rampart of bones. For the half of a century, no mortal has disturbed them. In paz requiescat. May he rest in peace. Alright. That brings our evening session of reading to a close. As always, thank you for watching. This is Winston Guitar, ASMR, wishing you a good night.